the auditor's office. She's going to be helping us with some of the troubleshooting. I was running around yesterday. Tammy's going to help me with that. Our presenter is Jay Maynard from Tyler Technologies, and he's with us from Florida. So he's going to present today. We're going to talk about P cards, the import process and how that's going to code in the system, how we're going to run the new P card process. And so I'll probably have some input on that to kind of explain what our process is. Jay is going to give a demonstration on what an import looks like, and then once the transactions are in the system, how we go forward with that. We also have some training for approvers. So how many people here are like in a department head or expenditure authority going to be doing some approvers? Okay, so we'll show you some of the basics of how that will work in Munis. And so that's our basic, agenda for today. And at the end, we'll have some time maybe for some questions and answers. So our timeline on how we're going to roll out with Munis, I'm going to go over this again. April 1st is our go live date. We wanted to make sure to give our users as much time as possible to get in and practice in the system. So the point of these trainings is to kind of kick it off and give you access to the system, make sure you can set up, get logged in, and start messing around, entering requisitions, invoices, and so your department heads and expenditure authorities can start practicing approving, how that will work in the system, and then we'll practice all the way through check runs, hopefully, at some point. So you'll be able to see some of these processes, and the more you practice in there, the easier it will be come April 1st. And as you go, if you have problems, let us know. I'm hoping that you guys break our system and we can figure out how to fix it so we can get all the nuances worked out before April 1st. Everybody should have 2 guides, and if you already have them and you didn't bring them, that's fine if you were here yesterday. The first guide is going to be our Munis Enterprise ERP guide, and I'll spend just a minute talking about this. And then the second guide is called Approvals, and it didn't get a draft on it, but this will be our draft. We're going to make a lot of changes to it. This was a first run to give something for our approvers to see today. And so there will be a draft number 2 coming out shortly. Anybody have any questions about these papers? Does anybody need one? Tammy? Okay, so over here in the corners, we need a copy of each. Wanted to go through our account structure really quick and our timeline. So we're going live April 1st. The last week of March, we're going to shut Eden down. What we have to do is we have to take our data out of Eden and we have to have a proofing time period of getting the data into Munis. So that week we're going to be shut down. There won't be any financial transactions being recorded. There won't be any requisitions or invoicing and none of that. It's going to all be shut down. That's the last week of March. And I don't know how many of you guys understand how the year-end process works. There comes a point in time where we are not going to process any more checks for payment. So any requisitions and invoices that are in the system, they're going to get pushed all the way through the system, and then anything else that doesn't get through, we're going to have to start over and re-enter in Munis. So we have to have a clean cutoff and shut everything down so that all of our transactions up to that point can get imported into Munis, and then we start fresh from there. So I think it's around March 15th. I don't have that date in front of me. We're going to have a shut off where everything past that will have to be re-entered into Munis. And so just to give you some ideas of a timeline on that. One other thing that I think is very important to just touch base on, this Munis Enterprise ERP User Guide is very helpful for understanding the account structure. Our current accounts in Eden, we tried to get it as close as we could to in Munis, and we just can't match it one for one. Munis is a system that required some changes. So this will help you on this guide understand the parts of our accounts and then which ones are yours. And hopefully in Munis, we have it set up to where you'll see mostly your department accounts and not have to sort through everybody else's. So those are some basics that will give us some foundation to stand on through training. And if you have brought your laptop, is there anyone here who has not been able to log in yet? Okay, so we have a couple users. I sent a link in an email to a test environment, and go ahead and look for that link. And if you are able to click on that link, it should take you to a couple login pages where you will use your Clay County IT side logins. For our JIS users, there is an email that they said they are sending. It'll give you a way to log into Okta, and you will have to create a password, I believe, and that password is what you will use for your Munis logins going forward. And so look for that email, and hopefully by the end of our session, we've got you set up and running and you're able to go along with us. So keep me posted for anyone on the JIS side. That is still coming. One other thing I wanted to note is some of our systems are not completely built out. We don't have all the integration with our vendors, such as UMB for P cards we don't have a full integration. So what we're showing today is a test implementation. Some of our bank things still need to be worked on. So we wanted to get you into this now as soon as possible with the pieces that are built. So there may be some things that don't function right. Another note from yesterday, if you are looking up your vendor numbers are gonna change. So this is a test import. All our vendor numbers are gonna change when we do a final import. And that should be coming up here soon, and we'll let you know when we've done that import. All right, so any questions and anything else up on the front end administrative-wise that we need to cover before we turn it over to Jay? Okay, well, Jay, we'll turn it over to you to demonstrate however you want to take on first, P cards or approvals.
Thanks, Benjamin. Morning, everyone.
One other thing I forgot to mention is this is being recorded so that we could watch it later and provide it to users who were not able to attend training. So just so you are aware of that.
Okay. All right. So as Benjamin mentioned, I'm going to kind of delve into the P card process. So as you know, those of you that have P cards, you go out, you spend on them. UMB Bank, right? Okay, so they're financed basically by UMB Bank. Then Clay County will receive a import file, as they do now. Within ERP, that import will be brought in based on the cards that are entered. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of the file format, that really won't pertain to you all out in the field. But what will pertain to you is what it looks like when it comes in. And where'd Benjamin go? Benjamin, did you want me to actually go through importing the file? Would it be relevant? Do they
I don't know.
what the file looks like? Or?
Is it a very long process?
Not really.
Okay, go ahead and show the import.
Okay.
Let me, Jay, I just got to thinking about it. There's something I should introduce to everybody about our P card process. It's going to change slightly. So I'd like to, up to where Jay is right now, explain the difference of what's going to happen. In our current system with Eden, our users that are making the charges, they have a reconciler that's assigned to that card. That reconciler goes into UMB and logs in and does a lot of coding in UMB. You're going to tell it which account to charge this particular transaction to. And then those transactions are exported out of UMB and imported into Eden. We're going to simplify the UMB side, where hopefully, and I just tentatively, this is what we're expecting to be able to do, is to not do any coding at UMB. So our reconcilers won't need to log into UMB is our anticipation. Those transactions and charges will come in by card number and be brought into Munis, and there the reconcilers will assign the accounts. This eliminates a lot of double work. We don't have to sit and make sure our accounts are kept up on UMB. We'll only use the Eden account or Munis accounts that we have in our system to code them. And it'll be a little easier for you to find those accounts. So that system is going to change. We're going to do a direct export of all the transactions out of UMB, import it into Munis, and then the reconcilers will go ahead and code where those go, and then they'll release it for approval by our P card administrator. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, Jay.
Okay. Thanks.
So when the reconciler's coding, that's also when they upload receipts?
Yes.
Okay.
So there'll be coding and attachment of receipts at that same level in Munis. And so Jay will demonstrate that here shortly.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, like Benjamin said, they'll receive a file, a statement file. The process will be to bring them in and import them into the ERP system. That process is done here on the P card import, and generally, is that going to be done by the auditors or?
Everybody here, look over here at Brenda. She loves the attention. Brenda's our P card P card administrator. Brenda's going to be doing our imports, and so she'll bring the file from UMB and bring it into Munis.
Excellent, okay. So essentially, Brenda will go in here to the import program, click define. She'll select or drag and drop the file in for the import. Let me find it. So some of the items that you'll see on your screen when you go in and look are the statement code. So essentially, let's say it's for December, and the ERP system is a little behind on the dating. So if I use December 2023, you all as an organization will develop whatever your syntax is for that statement, because some of that's going to depend on the frequency. Are you planning on monthly or possibly weekly imports?
Monthly.
Monthly, okay. So most clients that do monthly will use a statement date or the month that it's being imported for, something along that syntax. So I'm going to import it as December 2023, 12/31, and that's really about it for the import. Then when I click OK and import, the file's generated, contains previously imported transactions. Y'all won't have to worry about this. And then I'm going to click proceed, and that's it really. The file comes in, it gets imported, easy peasy. Then over in the P card program, in the statements, which is what's going to start to really impact y'all, under the financials in your ERP menu, accounts payable, and then invoice processing. It's kind of a cascading drop down for any of you that haven't seen it. So if I was to start from the beginning, I would go to financials.
And just as a side note, I'm not sure that anybody has access to this yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I don't think you'll be able to follow along. I would really encourage you to look, and we will develop a guide that will give you comprehensive step-by-step instructions.
Okay. So if you can't, then you will eventually be able to access this. And it's under accounts payable, invoice processing, purchase cards. And you'll probably just see the purchase card statements would really be the one that would pertain to the end users or administrators. So once the import is done, so if I go in and I search by that December 2023 statement code, I'm going to see down at the bottom there's 5 records, which this is just a sample file. Your files will be much larger, many more cards. Some of the items that come in, the last 4 digits of the card, the name of the card holder, their default department, which is the purchasing department that they work in, the statement code, what the statement status is. So there's a few different statuses: new, released, approved, converted, depending on where in the process that statement or that card statement is at. The GL year-end period, the GL effective date, the invoice date, and what the total for this card is. And by that, I mean this particular import only has one line for this card, so that one transaction of $220.28 is the total. If I go over, I think I've got one with a couple of lines on it. Yeah, so this one's got 2 lines. That total on the header screen is the total of all of the transactions. Okay. You will see down below each one of those charges, and generally they're probably going to be different dates. You might have some with a couple on one date and a few on other dates. Those are going to be the transaction dates. The import date is the date today that actually the import happened. And the general ledger account that's associated with it. On import, all your cards are set to import to this 100 general fund 000 B299 9999. That's the default P card liability account. Or I'm sorry, P card account. Then from here, and correct me along the way here, Benjamin, if I'm wrong, the administrators, it's going to be all administrators for the cards, not the card holders themselves, right?
That's correct. The card holders aren't going to be coding their transactions. It's going to be the reconcilers that are assigned. And so you will come in and be able to manage this record by changing the account, attaching the documents, and then you'll release it, and it will go to Brenda.
Yep. Okay, so here on the main screen on the statements, as I mentioned, you'll see the card holder and the transactions. Up in the top ribbon up here, you'll see a T that says transactions. So when you click on that, it's going to take you into the meat of that actual transaction. You know, you're going to see a little bit more information, the card holder, the vendor that it's assigned to, the charge description, charge date, post date, import date, and then down below if there's a contract, purchase order, the document invoice numbers, all of this. And then down below the account. This is where the administrators will actually manage each one of these transactions. So if I come up to the top and I hit update, I can update the card holder, I can assign a vendor. One of the processes that the system is set up for is on the import, it looks for the FID number of the vendor that's assigned to that charge from UMB. If that vendor's FID number doesn't find a match within the ERP vendor module, it's going to drive it to a default 999 vendor. At that point, on review, if there is a actual vendor in the system and it just didn't make that match, that would need updated so that this transaction is reflecting on the correct vendor within your ERP. Charge description, this can be updated. If you eventually use commodity codes, which you're not currently going to, you can pick from the commodity code list by clicking the ellipses and then the contract. And if there's a specific invoice number that's going to be assigned to the invoice, it's eventually going to be created from this. You can enter the invoice number here. Okay. As scrolling down, one of the primary responsibilities is going to be updating the GL account where the charge is going to get posted. So as I mentioned, it's all going to this one default account. However, on review and update, let me delete that. Hello. Whatever fund it's going to go to, the administrator is going to go in and.
Jay has access to all of our accounts, but we've set a data role where you should see a limited selection of accounts. So that way you're not scrolling through hundreds of accounts. You'll see your accounts in there that are available to you.
Okay, and what I'm doing here is I got hung up entering the account because I've got to change the account type to an E in order to find actual expense accounts. So with this type being an E, now when I click on the ellipsis for help, it's actually going to look for expense accounts rather than balance sheet accounts. So from here, you would scroll through and determine what is the proper expenditure account that should be charged. I'm just going to find one non-salaried. So maybe this is a cell phone bill. Right, so that's going to update the allocation or the GL account being charged. If this was, let's say, needed to be split between a couple of different GL codes, which may be practical, maybe you're doing 50-50 between a couple of different lines, you can change the percentage, to what the, roughly, I put 50%, but I recalculated because of a penny. What that account is going to charge to. So maybe it's going to be the same department, 561 in the general fund, but it's going to go to Yeah, that's the same account, sorry. A different GL account. Okay, so that's how you would do that if you needed to split it between a couple of different accounts. All right.
Can you go back up to the description one real quick?
Yep.
That needs to be changed whenever you're doing it. It
Okay.
needs to be what you actually purchased, because otherwise, whenever I run my report, that's all that's gonna show up, and the commission is not going to know what you spent money on. So
I'm gonna-
that line has to be changed to what you actually purchased.
I'm going to repeat this for the recording. Penny is making note that when you're talking about the charge description, is that the title? I can't read it. The description line needs to be updated to be very specific and detailed about what was purchased so that when it goes to the commission, it makes sense. We can understand it. And so that'll be simplified. You'll have to replace that with a good description of what you purchased.
Okay. So once you've completed your updates, you know, which sounds like probably 99 to 100% of the time, the charge description will be updated. The GL account will need to be updated away from that B299 account. And then you'll accept the changes. So within this transaction screen, you'll also, up here at the top, click on the paperclip. This will take you out to Tyler Content Manager, which is the documentation management imaging portal. I'll just take a second to load. So generally, when users are going out and spending their cards, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what your internal process is, but those receipts would need to end up with the administrator. Now, I don't know if at the departments, they would scan them at the department and email them to the administrator or physically send them over to them. I'm not sure how.
What we were anticipating was at this level, the reconciler would attach the documents that are needed, and they would hold the physical documents until after the audit for that year.
Okay,
Is there
so
any
the
reason
card
why you would
holders-
want to see the paper documents anymore?
Nope.
Brenda says no, so you would attach everything that you need to support that transaction inside of this record through Tyler Content Manager that Jay is showing you right now.
So those receipts would need to be scanned, and then here, when you click on that paper clip from the transaction, you'd click on the plus, do a purchase card transaction, and then here, upload or import. And then from here, you can do one of two things. You can click on the choose file to go to that folder wherever your receipt scans are stored, or you can drag and drop. So if you've got that folder open, maybe you've got 30 transactions and all your receipts are stored in one folder, it may be easier for you just to have that folder open, you know, and then you can just drag and drop the file in and then click on the import. And that would bring in the document. Last thing you would do is click accept or save the little file icon.
Question.
Yes?
This would be so this document that we would be uploading now, would be all of the receipts for that user or just one receipt for that specific
Well, at the transaction level, and I guess it's more of an organizational decision, at the transaction level, it's generally that receipt for that one transaction. Okay? There is the option on the main statement screen, and you can see down here that shows that there's a attachment to that one transaction. There's also the attachment at the statement level, so it'd really be dependent on your organization and powers to be on what the decision, the receipt at the transaction or all the receipts at the statement level. You know, had that been determined, Benjamin?
I was anticipating at the transaction level.
Okay.
To me, that makes sense because at any point we can go look up that transaction and see the support behind it.
Okay, so it would be sounds like at the transaction level. So when you're done updating each transaction, you click on the paper clip, Click add, import, upload, drag and drop, and save. Okay.
All right, up to this point, I know some of you have not been able to log in. The interface that we are working with, this is a web-based system, and hopefully we'll learn the processes a little easier. We'll make sense of it. The step-by-step guide will take you through all the different pieces you're going to need to update, what buttons you'll click, how you go, what's next. And so that part of the process, we're building now on the basic training that we had yesterday. If you haven't had the basic training, after we go through P cards, Jay's going to give us just a short overview over the hub and actually Munis menu and how that works. So this basic overview right now that we're going is specific to P cards. We'll come back to some of the basics of how the system works.
Okay. Yeah, so there's also some other fields in here. The PO liquidation, so there is the ability also to liquidate purchase orders from a P card transaction.
I don't think we plan on using that.
Yeah, okay. If you do at some point, that functionality is there in contracts. You can add notes, and this is just a simple text. Yeah, you can enter a note. Save it. And then, like if somebody's coming out here to look at this and the folder is yellow, that means there is a note there and you can just click in it and see it. Okay. Other than that, that's pretty much it at the transaction level. And same thing, so you can see this transaction based on the FEIN number that was brought in on the import file, identified vendor number 12, Madden Media, as the vendor within your system. If I go to the next record, you can see the vendor number is 99999. So within the system settings in ERP, it's been established that 99999 is the quasi one-time payment for any vendor transactions brought in as P cards that do not identify the actual vendor in your vendor program. Okay, 9 times out of 10, if not more, a lot more frequently than that, it's generally because, you know, like maybe UMB hasn't tracked that vendor's FEIN number, or that FEIN number wasn't put in your vendor record in the system, or it was, you know, one had a dash, the other didn't. You know, there's a lot of different reasons. You know, so you can kind of review what the vendor was, because it will bring in the actual vendor name, even though it's bringing in the one-time pay vendor code. So as you're updating that, if you see that 99999 code, you can always look at the name and say, oh yeah, I know that is a vendor, and click on the vendor upload, and then maybe sort by alpha, you know, and scroll down, say to the R's where you see that vendor's actual name with its associated true vendor number in ERP.
Is there any way to search the alpha?
Pardon?
Is there any way to search the alpha name
You can,
as opposed to scrolling through?
Down at the bottom, there's a search, Jay.
yeah. So here, if you go down and click on this funnel, then here you can say, you know, like, you want to search for outdoor in the vendor name, you would click on the drop down, do alpha search, and it would bring back any vendors with outdoor in the name. It would really limit it down. If you know the entire vendor name and key that in, it would just bring back that specific vendor. Okay, so when you do that, then you can say, oh, that's one I want, click accept, and it would update that vendor number to the actual vendor number record within your ERP system. Where that's important is, you know, as you buy on P cards, and I don't know, might be getting outside of the realm of y'all's responsibilities or areas. So at the end of the year, you know, the IRS requires 1099 reporting. Certain types of vendors and purchased amounts throughout the year are required to be submitted. It all goes to the IRS, whatever. These P cards are excluded from the IRS 1099 reporting. However, and I'm not sure, you can chime in if you need to, but Benjamin, but some states, counties, agencies have requirements where they're tracking how much is spent on a vendor. And this is a great way to be able to look at that vendor and see not only the actual AP invoices and checks or EFTs that were paid, but also including the P-card activity for that vendor. And it goes a long way to manage, like I said, the total spend on that vendor, what the types of spending is on that vendor and stuff like that. So it's, while it may not be stop the payment from going through if that's left at the 99999, but it's much better to have that accurately reflected on the vendor record. And again, as was mentioned, the charge description would need updated.
This, Jay is right. We don't have to report 1099s on this, but we do need to track our vendor purchases. Additionally, the vendor name is going to show up on the report that goes to the commission for
Right.
approval. So all of these details are very important for that report and for commission transaction assessment and analysis. They're to approve every transaction of the county.
Right. So again, if I change the B here to an E, and maybe this is going to a fund other than general fund even. So when I click the button, it's going to pull up all expense accounts. If I scroll down far enough, I'm going to get into a different fund. So maybe this one's getting charged to Fund 240, for outdoor power. Again, if you needed to split it between a couple lines, you could split it by percentage. Not limited to percentage, so maybe of this $95.92, $45 of this is going to get charged to this account. And as I tab down, it's going to bring the remaining amount to line 2, which would get charged to yet a different general ledger account. So it really just depends on, what your needs are. If you're splitting it, allocating it 50-50, if you're allocating it based on a dollar amount, you can do it either way. And there might be a lot of times where that transaction is staying charged 100% to that first line. That's fine too. Okay. Again, when you're done allocating and updating your account, you're going to click on the paper clip, click on the plus, purchase card, import, and either choose the file or drag and drop. And import. When you do that, also over on the right-hand side, it creates what it's called metadata. So you can see the attachment file name, the card number, which is masked up to the last 4 digits, the cardholder name, the vendor number, the transaction, the amount, the charge date. All of this information is stored on that TCM record for identification, and that's kind of in the background how it makes that link. Okay, then when you close out of it, you can see, well, we should be able to see. Up here at the top in the yellow, there's a 1, designating that there's 1 document attached to that record. Obviously if you had a couple different receipts for that 1 record, you'd put both in there and you would see a 2 or a 3. Okay. Anything else on those you can think of?
Can you show us back to the transactions list, which ones are approved, show how that looks?
Yeah. I haven't released any or anything. So right here in the status, as I mentioned, there's multiple statuses, new, released, approved, converted. And for anybody that wasn't in here yesterday or even as a revisit, on any of your transaction screens up here in the upper right, there's a question mark. If you click that and click help, for the most part, it's going to give you an explanation of the different fields, what is being presented or what is being asked, or what information is being relayed. So on the point of statuses, all of the status types are new, released, approved, okay, rejected, converted, or voided. You know, so that's where you're going to see what is the status of that particular transaction.
I'd like to address the rejected status in Munis, in Eden, let me go back to that. When someone rejects a transaction in Eden, that kills it. Nothing else can be done on that transaction. The only thing that can be done is delete it. When you reject in Munis, it sends it back to the person who was doing the originating transaction coding and all that, so that they can reactivate it, change it, fix it, and then release it again.
Right.
So rejection and rejecting in this is a little bit different than Eden.
Correct. If you need to get rid of a statement, up here there's a void statement. On occasion, I have run across where, for some reason, the same transaction or the same statement accidentally gets imported twice. You know, and literally you can come, somebody, whether it would be the main administrator, would be able to come out and void that statement. That's really about the only way that statement is going to be in a voided status. Otherwise, you should see any of the others: new, released, approved, rejected, converted. Okay. Yeah, so now when the statement is done, the line transactions are allocated, you've got a couple of different options. So this statement is done, both transactions. I can release this statement individually, or there's a mass release that would release all statements under this code, right? I haven't allocated the other ones nor attached anything, so this would be the only one that I would want to release.
So please don't ever click that button. Just take care of your statements.
Yeah, so you can see it's just a warning, there's no attachments on this statement. So question, some clients will opt on the statement itself for that card, and I'm not sure how you get that from UMB. Do you plan on having the overall statement attached at the statement level? The receipts would go at the individual transaction level.
We have yet to work out the details. We may import one statement at a time and have the actual statement attached to that, or we may import all of the transactions in one import. And so we'll have to work out the details on that. We haven't been able to test this yet, so that'll be something we work out later. But when you say the statement attached, you're talking like a printout PDF of the statement from UMB showing the transactions?
Right, so most P-card statements I've seen, it's like all one umbrella total statement for Clay County, and then underneath of that, you would have, each card holder would have a like page 1, 2, and 3 would be this card holder's statement with that activity, and then it would start on a new page. You know, so if you split those out, Denise Banning would have, you know, in this case, 2 transactions would just be 1 page of their own statement that could be uploaded and attached at the statement level.
We're talking currently over here. We probably will look at individual statements and importing those transactions together so the statement can be attached with it. And at the individual transaction level, you would then attach this support for each transaction.
Okay. Okay, so when you release it, if that's the case, then you get to see this warning. Okay, oops, you know, I should have attached the statement. You can click no, go back here. And it's the same as at the transaction level. You would click plus, import the statement, save it, close it, and then go back and hit release, and you wouldn't get this warning again. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue, and you can see the status changed from new now to released. Okay. On the P card itself for Denise Banning, which by P card I mean in the setup in the system, each card has its own record. Oh, sorry, this card ID, I want card number. You know, so that'll be established when the card is gotten or maintained. It'll have different information like the issuance date, expiration date, transaction levels, but it'll also have who's the statement approver and who's the notification user. So Denise Banning on this particular instance would get a notification that, her statement's been imported, and then when the administrator is done allocating things and releases it, the statement approver would get a notification that it's been released for approval. Okay. So that's how that drives. And down here, that's the default account that, the P card holding that comes in on each of the transactions. That's the one that I updated on each transaction. Okay. Then within the statement itself, so, maybe somebody's reached out to the administrator or you and, hey, your P card isn't approved yet, what's going on? You can come to your statement, look at the approvers here, and see where it's sitting in that approval process. So right now, this has been released. It's out for Brenda Gardner and Leslie Burton. However, initially, Sandy Johnson should have gotten notification to approve that at the statement level. Is Sandy here?
So when you say it's a notification, what the intention was so that Sandy Johnson would know that her transactions or the P card for Denise Banning has been imported, so that Sandy Johnson could then go in and do the coding. So there's not really an approval for Sandy Johnson, but it notifies her that her statement is ready for her to go do her work. Yep. So that notification may come in the form of an email or on the hub notification card. We can choose how that notification will be communicated. And currently, I think we're setting up every user to see it on the card in the hub. It's the orange card.
Right, so yeah, actually, if that's the intent, the notification user would need to, Sandy Johnson's the administrator?
She would be the P card administrator.
Okay, so you probably want to set her up also as the user, because the statement approver would actually approve it initially when it goes out.
Okay.
Before it's converted.
We'll talk about that, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So if we're not logged into the hub, we will not see the notification?
We can set it up to receive emails.
Okay.
So usually the basic way to receive notifications is how you will get all of your notifications. So that means every invoice that's for your approval and requisition would send you an email. And so you may not want that, it may get too much. So you may want to choose the hub and just kind of check in every morning, or when someone says, hey, I've got something for you to approve, or something's out there.
Okay. So as I mentioned, it's released if Brenda or Leslie, you Leslie Burton? Yeah. While they look, I'm going to the restroom. We'll run to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back. Watch you approve that.
Does anyone have any questions up to this point? I'm sure you're seeing some things you've never seen before. There's probably lots of questions. We won't have as much, it won't be as easy to test this, but what we plan is when we feel like we've got the system set up and running, we'll do some test transactional imports, and we'll let you know, okay, your P card statement's ready to approve, and work through that. So we plan to have more opportunities to test this. But when I look at this, it kind of seems fairly intuitive once you learn how the invoice and requisition and how the basic system works. You see a lot of commonality. Munis has done a very good job of keeping things similar across their different forms and reports that you will use. So this one, the main pieces are to record the account and to include a good description and to attach the receipts or whatever document to support the transaction. And then you would release it. And so that's the basics of what P card reconcilers will be doing. What we plan to go to next is approvals. And so Brenda is working on an approval, but what we should try to do is demonstrate another approval, how that would work. And so, have either of you approved it yet? Okay, you did approve it. So
Okay.
what we could do, Jay, is have them plug their computer in and we could show them.
Okay.
And maybe we could release another one for everyone to see. So the approval process is very, very similar. There's hardly any differences between P cards and invoices and requisitions. They're going to all be approved in a very similar way. And so I love that feature. And so we'll have Jay demonstrate that in a minute.
Okay, you want me to go ahead and release another one and then?
Yeah, let's go ahead and release another one. And also, we have 45 minutes, so we could spend some more time on approvals. I'd like to spend some time with that.
Yep. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pick on this one. Go to the, just to reiterate, go into the transaction, update the description. Come down here, change that to an expense. Pick the valid expense account, save it, attach. Import and save. Okay, so, and then I'm going to go back and I'll go ahead and release it and then they can project in. So I'm going to release. Now it's in a release status and then I'll let, yes, Leslie's going to come up and show you what the approval looks like. Which side you're on? Okay.
So what we're seeing right now was the landing page, which is what all our users should see. And it has those 3 colored cards at the top. What Leslie clicked on is the approvals card. There's a notification card, which is where the notification of the P card statement, when it was imported, it should show up there. There's some alerts that we can set up to give you more information about the system. So Leslie's going to click on the approval. She has 6 transactions in there. And if you look on the very left, there's 3 characters next to each one of the boxes. So APC, API, POM. Those represent different types of transactions. The APC is a P card transaction. And so at the very top, Leslie, you see all process codes. You can click on that drop down and say you have 30 different transactions that are out there and you're like, I need to just see requisitions. That'd be REQ. Or there's a purchase order, change order, and I believe that's the POM, right, Jay? Yes. And the API would be invoicing, and APC is your P card. So if you wanted to just see the P card, you would unselect all of the other ones, and it automatically updates, so you're filtered down to what you want to see. Do you want me to introduce how this works, like the view? Go ahead, Jay. If you want to go to the microphone for the recording.
Sorry, I'm going to steal your thunder for a second.
No, you can drive.
Oh, okay. So when you're on the screen here, if you click on the check box here to the left, you'll see down below you have the approve, reject, forward, and hold. So you have the ability right here, if it's something that's expected and you know what it is and no questions, you can approve it right from here. You can reject it back to the originator for any updates. You'll get a note field you can put in there, change the GL allocation account, which you obviously can't see on this screen. The forward, you can send it to somebody else. Maybe you got it, but you want somebody else to take a look at it based on the coding or the department. or you could put it on hold. Maybe there's questions and you don't want somebody accidentally approving it. You could place it on hold, and then it would need to be taken off hold before it could be approved. Up in the upper right, there's a jump button. If you click that, that will take you out to the actual transaction screen. And then from here, you can dig in a little deeper, see any attachments. Well, you'd have to go down here. This will take you to the statement, and then you would go to transactions and come down to the bottom and see, okay, GL account looks good, documentation looks good. So then you can click the back. And if it's all good to you, you can go ahead and approve it even from here. Just click approve. Again, you could reject it from here. Maybe you came out here to verify and the information doesn't look right. Forward or hold from here.
Can you show the approvers button down at the bottom right for those who are here today?
This one?
Nope, the one to the far right.
Oh, yeah. So if you wanted to see, who the approvers are, again, you can just click on the approval, and it would show you that these particular ones have one approval step. Some of them, like your AP invoices, your requisitions, PO change orders, might have 3 or 4 steps. They would all go sequentially. You might have step 10, then step 20, then step 30, then step 40. Each one is approved sequentially. You can't approve step 30 or 40 before step 10 or 20 or 30. Okay.
Someone asked for you to explain what forward means.
Forward just means if there's, like I mentioned, if it's being charged to another department maybe, or it's a split line and you want somebody else, another approver, to look at it. If you hit forward, you can pick what user, maybe this was the clerk's office, but for some reason Benjamin needs to, review and approve it as well. So as long as they're an approver in ERP, you could pick one of those approvers that you need to forward it to. You could put a comment in there, maybe please review second GL allocation line or whatever the situation is.
So Jay, when you forward it to somebody, if they approve it, do they approve in place of you, or do they approve and then send it back to you?
They would approve in place of you at that step.
Okay. And so you could attach all these different documents. The listing there that populates of the approvers that you could send it to, I have to go into each individual record and decide if you are an approver or not. I have to promote you to be an approver. So you will not show up on that list unless you are set up to be an approver somewhere.
Right.
So if you're a department head or an expenditure authority and you want someone to be an approver, you have to let me know, or I've already set them up in some of the workflow approvals. So if they're not showing up there and you want them there, go ahead and communicate with the auditor's office and we can add them as an approver.
That would be, for instance, when that would be needed, would be like, and tell me if I'm understanding this correctly or not. So Parks has Halloween, they pass out candy for Halloween. But the money isn't necessarily coming from, we're going to use somebody else's P card for that, somebody outside of that department. And so, but it's for them, they're going to use it, but we're using somebody else's budget. And so Parks, whoever has a P card purchases it, but it's charged to a different fund. It would go to that card holder's approval. They can't approve it because it's not in their fund, but they could transfer it to whomever's approval queue it does belong to.
That could be one example. You won't see that on P card transactions as much maybe, because what Jay hasn't shown you as the next step, this is just Brenda approving the P card transaction. It's going to send it through to the invoice side, and it's going to go through the invoice approvals.
Right.
And so on that side,
Brenda would never need to forward it to someone else before she approved it.
she might forward it to somebody. I mean, that could be something you can do. I don't know that it's necessary. Brenda as the P card reconciler on P card transactions, she's the administrator, she would be the one to approve. But I could see what you're saying in an invoice. It gets to you and you're like, well, I've authorized it for my account, but I want them to look at it and make sure that it's, got all the transactions that they wanted it to have, all the attachments and support. So, I mean, I could see how that could be used. What might be more likely is it could be somebody else in your office. So it could be Brenda says, I'm an approver on this, but I want Leslie to make sure she approves it. Or, she may send it over to Patrick for something. So this could be an example of forwarding to different people so they know it's theirs and not yours. You want them to look at it.
Right. And while we're talking about forwarding and such for approvers, I'm going to cancel this. I don't want to forward it. I just wanted to go back to the hub for a quick second. For anybody that's approvers, when you go into your approval tile, and let's say you're going out on vacation, down in the settings, you have the ability to come down to the bottom and put a date, start date and time, and end date and time. Historically, up until this was integrated, you had to contact your user, IT, admin, whomever, and say, I'm going out, can you set me on my user attributes? You can do this yourself now, and not only set it up so you're out, but then tell it who to forward those to while you're out for the approvals. So your temporary approver. At the top, you can say all transaction types that come to me, I'm going to forward to, maybe to Benjamin. Or down below, you can say for P cards, go to one approver. Your AP invoice approvals might go to somebody else for approval. Your PO change orders might go to yet somebody else. Or maybe your APC and APIs go to the same person, and your recs and your PO change orders, but you would individually select those there. Okay. Just since we were talking about approvals, you can't mention that too often because it's really been to me, it's been a great implementation being able for users to be able to do that, and rather than.
In Eden, what we have done to get around needing all of these extra notifications to the auditor's office, we've set up backup approvals, so a backup approver. So Terry Griffin may have someone backing her up, and so that person could go in and approve at any time in Eden. And so in Munis, what we could do is limit it down to Terry's the approver at this level. We don't need a backup anymore. And then when Terry is ready to go out of town, she says, hey, can you make sure this person's an approver? Once I set them as an approver, they can stay as an approver forever, and she can temporarily use them to approve in her place during the dates and times that she chose on those settings. So it's really convenient for our department heads and expenditure authorities and those that are approving to designate someone else to take care of the transactions while they're gone.
Right. And let's say if that somebody's, it's at 10 o'clock at night, somebody gets an emergency reason they have to leave town all of a sudden and they don't get back into Hub to set this, it's still possible for the system administrator who manages the users to be notified, and they can go in behind the scenes on the user and still set this.
And so that would be the auditor's office. If there's any reason that that person's not able to authorize someone else to approve, the auditor's office can take that forwarding approval. We can go make that forward to the person that should be appropriate.
If we have that second person set up as a possible approver, does that mean that anything that came to me as the first approver, they could automatically approve that if I forget to tell Munis that I'm going to be out of town this week and somebody else needs to do it?
So what you saw here on the P card approval, it showed Leslie and Brenda. Brenda's actually the one that's going to be doing those approvals, and if any reason something goes wrong and Brenda's not able to be there, Leslie could also approve. And so Leslie may not want that, because now when Leslie's looking for her approvals, some of these things that are really Brenda's are showing up also, and she might accidentally approve something that was meant for Brenda. And so in some ways it's beneficial, other ways it could be a negative. So it's up to your department. You will see who all is listed as the approvers at those levels. If you find that you want us to eliminate some of them and allow them to only be the forwarded approval at times, you can make those decisions and then communicate that to us and we can fix it.
Okay. Do you want to practice approving?
Oh,
You can. Go ahead. I've done it a million times.
I'm
so.
so excited right now. Oh my God. Okay. P card.
Yep. And,
Approve.
Yes, ma'am. You put a comment or just approve?
Wow.
There are
Awesome.
sometimes comments are required,
Thank you.
sometimes they
You told me
aren't.
that
If you're
back in the day.
rejecting, a comment is
Great job.
required. And if you try to submit it without a comment on the ones where it is required, it will tell you this is required. So if you don't, just click submit, it'll let you know when you have to.
Okay. I'll give you your computer back.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Thank you. All righty. Okay, so going back into the P-card statements, I'm going to bring that one up now that it's approved.
Jay, are you plugged in? It's not showing up on the TVs.
Yeah, I'm plugged. Nope. Now I am. Okay, so all I did was click on the search, and I'm just going to pull that one up. And you can see now it went from being new to released to now approved. Okay, so the last part of this, once it's approved, is converting this into an AP invoice. And that's done up here on the, for this particular instance, I've only got one record in my record set, so it really wouldn't matter if I did single convert.
And we also want to be clear whose role this is. This is Brenda Gardner's role. So once you release it, you can just count on your job being done as a P-card reconciler. If Brenda has any questions, she'll send it back to you. But once you release it, Brenda will approve and send it on to where it's supposed to go at that point.
Okay. So do you want me to walk through the conversion just so they know? Okay. So Brenda will manage this, but it's a matter of doing the conversion. So when I click on the single conversion, it's in the general journal is created. And basically what's happening behind the scenes in the AP system settings, there is a standard AP liability account that regardless of what fund the expense is hitting, all of the costs across all of the P cards accumulate into that one liability account. That's where the bank is paid. This transaction was posted to the actual GL account that transaction was marked to. So for budgetary and reporting and management on the department side, that's really, really all that y'all need to focus on is what expense account that's hitting. Because she said,
And so this is just going to go and make sure, it takes the journal to make sure your expenditure account is the one that goes and gets pinged at this point.
right.
And now what it's doing is it's going to send it over to invoices. And if you think about our paper system that we have currently, at this point you've essentially attached the paper to the P-card statement. And now you're going to send it through the process for all the different approvals. So we would send our P-card paper and it gets signed by all these different places. So we got purchasing involved, we got the auditor involved, we've got your department expenditure authority. Currently they haven't approved anything, right? And so what this is doing is we've sent it over to invoicing, and now it's going to walk electronically through that same process of the department head's going to approve it, then it's going to go to purchasing, and then it's going to go to the auditor, and then it's going to go to the clerk of the commission, who's going to prepare it to go to the commission to approve, and then it's going to come back and get ready to go for payment. So that's,
Right.
and so P-cards, I don't need to explain all the details, but they'll be handled a little bit differently on the payment side. So we'll take care of that on our end. And so at that point, just so you know, all the different steps, it's mirroring the paper signature process electronically now in Munis.
Yep, and then, so when Brenda converts, and really it's an organizational decision. Do you convert each one into its own batch, or do you wait till all of the statements are completed and do the mass convert and convert them all? Either way, when you do the conversion, it's going to show you what batch on the AP invoice side was created. So now if I go over to invoice entry on the accounts payable, and here I can do one of two things. I can either do a search and accept, or I can just do a browse and look at all the batches. But I'm going to look for batch 87.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you're doing a search for batches, do you only see those batches that are related to your account, your user?
Great question. So, and I don't recall exactly how everything was set up, but yes, you can have the ability to restrict what the users see based on their department or GL accounts. And you recall how detailed that was restricted?
I believe we've set it up to where you will see your departments that you are overseeing. So if you have multiple departments in, say, 240 for park, but then you've also got a Fund 301 Park Trails department, you will see all of those departments, anything related to transactions that you are given that data access to. And so if there's things you're not seeing, let us know. I would recommend that we release by statement and convert them by statement. That way the transaction, that batch is created for that statement is all of their transactions.
Okay. Yeah, and you can search just by that batch, so obviously that would be the only batch that comes up. And then click accept. And you'll see the summary on the batch header here, but then if you go into view batch, then you'll see each of the transactions on, in that scenario, that statement. If you click accept, yeah, figure out what that's about. Caught in a loop. I'll figure that out.
It could show the approvers of that.
Maybe. I'm going to have to figure out why that's erroring.
So to give you an idea of where we would go from here, for those that were in our basic training yesterday morning, when you enter an invoice, it's going to populate at that point when you release it. It will show who all is going to approve at that point. Just like we did on the P cards, you could see the approvers button in the right, not the approve. When you scroll down on your record, you could see there's approve, reject. You go over and there was the approvers, you could click on that and it would show you at the invoice level who is going to approve each one of those.
Yeah, so this, I just went into a different batch, but from that point forward, it's the same whether it's a P card converted batch or if it's a manually entered invoice. So this one is released, it says pending approval. And as Benjamin mentioned, if you go down to the approvers, down here you'll see, okay, step 5 has been approved. Tammy Newsom completed that one, now it's at step 60 for these approvers.
We set that up for training, just for the record. Step 5 is just there for training, so
Training, okay.
Tammy could develop our user guides.
Okay. And then step 70, and then there's the step 80, and step 81 for the treasurer. So that would tell you where each of the processes are. Okay. You probably won't, as a department, get too many like calls from vendors or anything on where your P card payments are at because they're already paid by the P card. But if you get a regular invoice question, you know, you got multiple avenues. There's Vendor Central, Invoice Central. But if you did, for any reason, you were one of the people entering these and wanted to jump into invoice and see where it's at, this is a good way to kind of look at and see, you know, what stage the approval's at, whether you need to call or email that person and say, hey.
So Jay, before you move on, we have set up, just stay right here for a second.
Yeah.
We have set up all kinds of workflow, and this is like the approval queues. And how this works in Munis is if it's 240, 746, that's park, golf, it should first go to Mike Schreiner. And then Mike Schreiner would approve and it would go to John Davis as park or something. I can't remember exactly how all these work. As you enter them, I would encourage you to go check your approvers, because sometimes the workflow doesn't work properly. And so we can see that it got captured. The first time it got captured was 5 for Tammy, But then it skipped, and I know that step 30, if you scroll down a little bit, there's supposed to be a step 30 for the department head, and so it skipped that. It could be that this transaction is supposed to, or it could also be that for some reason, 504, it didn't get captured where it was supposed to. I think 504 is, anybody know who that is? I can't remember the department. It's on our booklet here. We'll look that up. So on our little Munis guide, I'm looking at department is the page 3. 504 is recorder of deeds. So Sandy, you got skipped. Of course you did. So I'm going to have to look into this and figure out why it skipped that level. This is the kind of thing that I would like for you to let me know about so we can make sure that all of our workflow is set up before we go live. That way all the department heads get the proper approvals the way they're supposed to.
A lot of that's, a lot of them, courts don't go to expenditure authority. They go directly to us.
We've mirrored what was set up in Eden. And so for the record, just for people to know, we mirrored, and I tried to mirror what was done in Eden in our workflows, in our approval queues that we have in Eden. So it should be the same step approvals that you said. If you wanted, so sheriff, for example, has different divisions. They approve before it goes to the sheriff. So it's not always the expenditure authority. There's sometimes departments that approve before. So we mirrored how it was currently working and tried to build that out in Munis. So if you see something that's not working the way it did in Eden, let me know.
You said it's Sandy Brock?
Sandy Brock, yep.
Yeah, I won't digress too much on this, but yeah, it's step.
This is how I build it. So it's either in Fund 100 or Fund 933. It's going to look for the department. So if you're in general fund and it's a different department, it won't be captured. But if you're 100 and it's Department 504, it should have pulled in.
So let me take a quick look at that GL account. Okay, so that's 100, E301, 314.
So I don't know why that didn't pull in. We'll have to look into
Yeah,
that.
it should have. It looks like it off the surface, looks like it should have. I wonder, it might be these parentheses, but anyway, we can look at that. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's, then of course, once the AP invoice is processed, it'll get pulled into the, those will get posted, it'll get pulled into the check run, which actually the P cards don't go to a check run, they just get posted and then the bank statement gets paid as a separate invoice. Anything else with P cards you want covered?
Does anybody have any questions on P cards? We have a couple other things we would like to show for approvers, but we're happy to answer any questions at this point for P cards. Cheryl?
When you're releasing each transaction and you're uploading the invoice, then you said to attach the statement. Do you have to do that to each transaction? So like if you have 5 transactions, you're applying that statement 5 times?
Yes.
Okay.
So Jay, when we import the batch of P card statements, is there a way to import it to all of those transactions? That's what I was envisioning happening. Some of this I haven't seen yet because we don't have the transactions set up to bring in.
I thought you could import the statement on just that.
The batch.
Yeah.
Is that right, Jay? You can import the statement on the batch for the P card? The P card statement?
Yeah, so when you go into the statements,
Yeah, so we'll get a description for each card user.
so here on the statement, if you import here, this is going against that statement.
Yeah, so this is where the P card statement will be housed.
Right.
Then once you go inside to the transactions, it's kind of like a folder. This is your bank statement folder. We're going to go inside the folder and look at the individual transactions. That's where we'll attach the invoices,
Right.
the individual
So
receipts.
if you had 5 transactions on that statement, you're right, you would attach you'd clean up the description and the GL account for the first one here, attach that one, If there's more, then you go to the next record, update that comment, description, GL account, attach that receipt, and then the next one.
And so you won't hit release until you're done.
Right.
That's your final thing you do is you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm releasing it to go to approvals.
Because once you hit release, you can't attach anything else until it's been returned to you?
I believe I've set the security up. I have ability to change that, but I believe I've set the security up that you can change it until you release it. Once you release it, you probably can't change anything else. Brenda would have to say, okay, you missed something, or you would say, Brenda, send it back, I missed something. She'd send it back to you. You'd fix it, you'd release it again.
Yeah, good question. Anybody else, any other questions?
In the record, and when we're in the record,
Oh, in the
from
tran-
here,
In the transaction?
no, where you just were?
Statement.
Yeah. So if Brenda were to, because it's already been released, right? This one has been released.
Yeah.
So if Brenda wants to send it back, how does she do that? Or from,
Yeah, so this one's actually been approved, so none of these are highlighted, and it's not in my queue, but if
Okay.
this was still just in a release status, and she was in this screen, so you just click reject, it would come
Okay.
up with a comment, you'd say whatever it is it needs, and okay, and it would go back and notify the statement holder.
Okay.
Or admin that it's been rejected, and you need to update, so.
So if it's been rejected to you, up in those Skittle buttons, we call them Skittles because that's the easiest way to describe those. In those Skittles, you're going to find one that says reactivate. So it inactivates the transaction when it's rejected. You have to reactivate it, then you edit it, do what you need to, then you release it
Right.
again.
is there a way to undo? Like, say we approve something and we're like, oh, didn't mean to approve that. You can't. Okay.
The next level approver has to reject it.
Return it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so what we have, any other questions? We have about 13 minutes. We've got, I want to show you, just and make you aware, I guess I don't need to show you this right now, but on Leslie's approvals, you remember how she had all different kinds of transactions? There's one called POM, and that's a PO modification. What that means is, say a user, you guys are the AP clerks and you're entering a transaction, you've got a requisition that you've requested, it's gone to a purchase order for $100. Now that you've gotten the invoice, it's for $150. You remember how now we only allow a 10% increase on a purchase order? Well, what we're doing is we're changing the process so that when you want a greater dollar amount, you can request a change to that purchase order, and it could be whatever amount you want. We're not going to limit it any longer because what we're doing now is sending it through for approvals that match what happens on the requisition side. So if somebody requested, it goes to the department head and then purchasing and auditor on the requisitions. Now, if you want to change that purchase order, we're going to send it right back through for those approvals. And these things you can go through really quickly. So that POM means Leslie had an approval to change a purchase order. So somebody's requesting an increase so that the invoice can then be processed at the higher amount than what the purchase order was there for. So I wanted to make you aware of that type of approval is coming your way. Your end users, your AP clerks, they're going to be able to make those changes now on their end to get the process or get the increase to the purchase order.
Right.
Any questions on that?
So they'll be able to do that with partial pays as well.
So partial pays will come through as just a regular invoice transaction. And so the purchase order will just stay open unless they choose to close it.
But I mean, if the purchase order doesn't have enough money,
Then they can request a change to increase it.
and they can increase it themselves.
Yep. And that's part of our basic training that we're doing this afternoon, basic training part 1 and 2. we can show those increases to the purchase order, the change order request. There's two types of changes. Say you find a purchase order that you don't need anymore and you want to close it, you can you can close it on your side and it will send it through. So that modification can be to close the purchase order and it will go through approval to close. You could also make other changes like increase the dollar amount. Jay, it might be good to, basic reporting, we're gonna have to get back on that. There's some reports that aren't finished yet. Some of the best data that you're gonna find in Munis is in our centrals. We're gonna have an account central, a vendor central, a purchase order central, an invoice central. All these different places are gonna house a very summarized version of what transactions are out there. But we also are gonna have reports to show your account balances. But when you go to Account Central, you can look at individual accounts. And so Jay, let's show that for our departments and expenditure authorities. They will probably appreciate the level of detail in the Account Central.
Yep. So under General Ledger Menu, Inquiry and Reports, there's the second one down as Account Central. When it first comes up, it's going to be a blank screen. Depending on what you're looking for, you click Advanced Search, New Search. You know, maybe you're looking for something in Fund 100 and 220. Maybe you're looking at just the auditor's department. So whatever parameters you put here are what accounts are going to be returned. So I'm looking at 100 and what was it, 219 with Department 500. So down at the bottom, I can see there's 34 records. By default, the screen is laid out to show the first 25. If I click this drop down, I can tell it I want to see 50 or 100 on each screen. So if I click on 100, obviously there's 34 records. I'm going to see all 34 on one screen. I can just scroll up and down. If there's 200, then down at the bottom, I'm going to have to click on the next record screen to move forward and see the next set of 100. Okay. So for here, you can see there's revised budget, actuals, any encumbered and requisitions, what the remaining available budget, and what the percentage of that account's budget used is. Okay. Let's say I want to see accounting and consulting services, I want to see more detail on that. So if I click on the account name over here, it's going to take me into a sub-screen with more information. I can see across years. I can go down here to the transactions, and you can see there's the original budget, revised budget, actuals, and available budget. So maybe right now it's showing me each of these. The BUC is the original budget posting. If you see anything with a BUA, that's a budget amendment, either as a budget adjustment, either as a budget amendment or as a budget transfer. So the difference being an amendment is something that's been authorized as an increase or decrease to that budget line versus you transferred money in or out of this account to another account. If I click on just the actuals, it's going to bring in just any true actuals. GNI is general journal import, and that's converted data that we brought into 2022. But as you move forward, you'll see things like in the actuals, GEN, general journal entry, possibly a GNI, API for an AP invoice.
Can you also show, on this one, we've got a download button, and I believe on the main screen, we have a download where you could download all of the accounts at the face, like viewing what you were looking at right there.
Right.
It'll download it into Excel?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll show that in just a second here. And here you can drill out if it's relevant to you to the actual journal transaction, and it would show you, all the lines on that journal. May not be applicable to everybody in here, but anybody looking, reviewing at the accounting transactions and what the postings were You can look at it here. What Benjamin was talking about here, within the actual account, if you click on the download to Excel, that's going to give you a download with a tab for each of those. I believe it's a tab for each of the different transaction groupings, yeah. So there's the account overall snapshot. There's your transactions, so you can see all of the different types. There's budget completion, general journal import, requisition, PO entry, AP invoice posting, PO liquidation, PO entry. And then your segments, it's going to show you what the segment breakdown for that one GL account is. Your monthly data, which is pulling basically from your history. So it's going to show you January, December, you know, if you had anything in there for February, March, April, May, June, it would show you all the summary transactions for each month. If you have any budget roll-up groups, you would see that. Any of your current year versus carry forward. So this is really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of like PO or encumbered contract budget carry forwards and how much has been spent in the current year for any of those that have been carried forward.
And can you show this back on the main screen,
Yep.
what the download would look like?
So if I go back here on the main accounts, and this is again all the accounts that fit my query, the search result, if I click on the download here, yeah, and this may be applicable, you want to export it to Excel for some data mining or pivot tables or any other manipulation for reporting or informational purposes.
And then also the gear icon when you get back to it.
Yep. You know, so here it's just really exporting all those accounts out in summary into one spreadsheet. Okay. So it's pretty much the same thing you're seeing on the account screen, but in Excel. So as I mentioned, you can, you know, do what you need to do with it. Okay. And then up here on the gear, you know, you can see what, you can tell it what you want to see. You know, so if I select all, I'm going to see all of the transaction data columns, amount, original detail, vendor, posted date, reference fields, warrant number, effective date, voucher number. So if I click on that and then go back out to accounting and auditing services, you can see now down here there's a lot more information presented on the detail.
And Jay, is it account inquiry where you can summarize based on the selection criteria?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's say within, if I go to the one above it on account inquiry, and actually you can kind of do that in account centrals as well, and I'll give you both screens so you can compare it. Let's say I want to see everything in all funds, but I want to see the objects for legal fees. So that's B206. Right, so again, it's pulling all funds, all departments, everything with object 206 for legal fees. I could export that to Excel and do a total on the actuals column, or in account inquiry, I can again go up here to the segment find in the Skittle, or I can search down here in the object code and say E206. It's pulling the same data set, 42 accounts of legal fees. Okay, with those 42 accounts in the record set in this screen, I can come up here and click on the blue T or the totals. That's going to summarize all of that for me on that main screen. Okay, so a quick and down and dirty, you know, how much did we spend in the last, 2020 for legal fees was 202. 2021 was 289, 190. 2022, 319. And then so far in 2023, 5,000. Is that what you mean?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if you, let's say, look at legal fees within your own department, your search criteria, and then when you want to leave, just click exit totals. You know, your search criteria and the segment find, it can be more refined. You know, maybe you want to look at just your department, like say the auditors, legal fees.
Now, while Jay's doing this, I want to explain on your, everybody that has this, if you could look at this, your Munis Enterprise ERP User Guide. Right in the middle of it, it says segment labels. And so basically, it's explaining that the GL account, what parts of it, and what the titles of those parts of it are, and what they mean. So the first segment is a 3-character or 3-number segment called Fund. And so that's the exact same as Eden. The department is the next one. And so in Eden, sometimes the department was at the end, sometimes the department was right here, and it's a 3-digit segment for department, and those department numbers are the exact same that we have in Eden. Nothing's changed there. The next one is an object, and it's going to start with alpha character. E is expenditure, B is balance sheet, R is revenue, and then it will have 3 numbers. And so that'll tell you that same line that we have in Eden, it'll give you the same line. So if you're 201 accounting and consulting services, it would be E201 in Munis. I just want to make you aware. The last piece that I want to make you aware of is when you're looking at expenditures, when we run our reports in Eden, we can look by personnel, contractual, and commodities. Contractual, personnel is 1, contractual is 2, commodities is 3, capital is 4. So if you look in this last segment called, or second to last, called classification, it's a 1-digit segment. If it's a 0, it means it's a balance sheet or a revenue account. If it's a 1, it means it's an expenditure for personnel. 2 would be contractual, 3 commodities, 4 capital. So that's a way that you could get your segments that we need for reporting purposes. That's a way you could quickly gather that data, and using the account inquiry, you could go to classification for your department and find all of your 200 expenditures and be able to quantify what that total would look like.
Okay. Last thing I wanted to mention. So you'll notice a visual difference between these screens. This is the central screen, and this is the inquiry screen. So they're kind of built a little bit on different background platforms. In most of the, I guess, .com screens, you'll notice there's an ellipses for a search, and where you would select, let's say, the fund, and then accept, and that would populate it here, and then accept to query on those. In any of the Centrals programs, your searches are going to be up here, and you'll notice there's drop downs where you'll actually check the funds that you're going to select for the query, and then click search. So just so you're not too thrown off by the search process for each of those. Any of the centrals are going to be like this, and any of the standard inquiry screens will look like this.
And so on the centrals, you can save your search. So if you choose your department and all your funds, they're going to show up. Every time you reopen it, you could have it set to automatically open to your accounts where you don't have to keep researching. So that'll be very handy. You could name it, and you could label it down at the bottom. You can click that checkbox, run this search on application start.
Yep. So as you set your parameters in the search, give it a name, check here.
Hit save.
Yeah, hit save over here. And then once you go back and go out of it, come back in 2 weeks from now, as Benjamin said, when you open that up, it's going to return these results when you open that Account Central screen. Okay. Similarly for purchase order centrals or invoice centrals, you know, if you set up what you want your default query to be, do the same thing, give it a name, run it on application start, and that's what will open every time you open that program. You can always go in and do another search and query on different parameters, but by default that would come up.
All right, we are past time, and I appreciate everybody's patience. We'll go ahead and stop now, and if you would like to ask questions, we can stick around for a few more minutes and you can talk with us. But thank you. We will have this training again tomorrow morning at 9:30 to 11. And this afternoon, we'll have basic training 1 to 2:30 and 3 to 4:30. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everyone.